So the first question you asked, Ash, is the P&L is operations in dollars. Essentially, it is a story told through numbers for the business. And I think that's important for us as finance people to understand, right? P&L isn't just a bunch of spreadsheets. It isn't, a large calculator being shown just because that's what we need to do as finance people. It's actually telling the story of what the business has done in a particular period. And
Mm.
when you're doing your forecasts and your budgets, you're trying to predict the story that's going to happen. And I think that's important for us to think about, Ash. And so a question that we can ask ourselves is what type of behaviors, what type of answers, and what type of stories would you eventually see in the numbers when it's completely clean? And now I add that caveat as completely clean because there's obviously messy numbers that sometimes don't tell the story of a business. So what do you reckon, Ash? Do you reckon we can address to the audience the types of behaviors or the stories that eventually show up in these numbers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, but we've got to really unpack the why, like you're saying, right? So it comes back down to understanding the history, what occurred during that time, and what's driving that number for this year. And is it even comparable, right, for your sense? So, because it's all well and good to do a rolling forecast and adjust it by CPI and say, oh, well, Tuesday last year did this number and we're going to increase it by this. But if there's a one-off event that we don't know about and 12 months later we're trying to figure that out, everything can just go completely wacky, right? So it's really good to
Mm.
explain the why.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, if everyone's just wondering why Ash is speaking so softly, it isn't because he's shy. We do actually have sleeping kids, and so that's one of the reasons we are A, called the account ads, and B, we speak softly at this time of night. But Ash, P&L operations in dollars. Let's go through a couple of P&L line items, right? And let's talk about the story that could potentially tell for a business owner or a finance team and how we can translate this story of being operations in dollars. So let's just say a labor cost line, Ash, for a construction company, for a manufacturing company, for a lot of companies, actually even professional services to an extent where you're charging out your labor of an accountant or something to a customer. We just see that sometimes as salaries and wages, or we see that as a cost line. Really, many businesses and industries look at that as a reflection of revenue. And the flip side of that is the utilization of that labor cost towards earning revenue. Give us an example, Ash. Do you have an example of that in a place that you've worked at or an industry that you've been a part of?
Oh, multiple industries. So we've got examples where if it's labor-based, we've been checking contractual hours go through. We didn't understand the clients, to understand the actual mix of things that we're going through. We've tried to understand things like, let's say, supplier impacts and what the seasonality of those items were. How about
Yeah.
yourself?
Yeah, I think we had a recent example actually where we noticed margins going down in a particular month, and the easy, I guess, narrative or story that you'd see in a finance report is, oh, our margins dropped in a particular month. And that'd get everyone tearing their hair out thinking, how did we drop margins in a month? Did our cost creep up? Like, what's the story? Did a deep dive and we realized actually there's just been a lot of leave taken that month. And the way our rates had been built, the way our budgets had been built, we had a certain percentage of leave banked on being taken over a particular couple of months. We obviously kept over that, which is natural. It happens in business, particularly during periods like school holidays, public holidays, and things like that. And so that in turn dropped your utilizable labor, dropped your revenue, and it meant you were having less revenue to absorb your overheads. And so it was an easy story to tell once you actually look down deep in the detail. And sometimes you tell the story and there isn't really a solution that you can give off the back of it rather other than just say, this is what happened. So this is one of those instances.